Today we are honored to have with us some of the important figures who have contributed to the end of the Cold War. Ronald Reagan, Margaret Thatcher, Mikhail Gorbachev, Boris Yeltsin, and Leonard Brezhnev. However, the question remains, who had the biggest role in ending the Cold War? Let's hear from them.
Well, thank you for the introduction. You see, while the US could maintain its military might by investing only about 7% of its national income on defense, Moscow had to spend at least 30% just to keep up. Recent studies have shown that, while a lot remains to be uncovered about the defense burden of the USSR, we do know that it was very large and unprecedented for a major power in peacetime.
Mr. Reagan, are you referring to my economic legacy? Okay, I must confess that I'm the culprit for the economic stagnation of the Soviet Union, which ultimately forced it to stop competing for superiority. During the 1960s to 70s, I kept all the old economic models of the Stalin's era that were inefficient and outdated. Oil revenue subsidized other segments of the Soviet economies and created the illusion that we were doing well. Thus, we were averting any reform. The economy could not be sustained and the people's standard of living was crippled. It was under such economic condition that you, Mr. Reagan, could launch your aggressive policy to further cripple our economy. It was also because of these serious economic problems that Gorbachev had to focus on internal problems instead of competition with the USA when he took over the country.
Yes, it's true I took advantage of your legacy, Mr. Brezhnev. I am so proud of my ingenious Get Tough policy. The announcement on the proposed Strategic Defense Initiative, aptly dubbed Star Wars, was a bluff, but it successfully made the Soviets panic and squeezed them into overspending. Since Mr. Brezhnev said oil money was an illusion for them, I brought them back to reality. I persuaded OPEC to increase their oil supply, which effectively decreased oil prices in the world market. The USSR was now deprived of an inflow of foreign currency they so desperately needed to prop up their industries. What's more, the support of our proxies in South America, Afghanistan, and Grenada also definitely vacuumed the Soviets' budget and made them lose the Cold War.
Well, Ronald, don't forget my unyielding support and close alliance. Even before you came to office, I had supported the US cause firmly. Remember 1980? When Kremlin decided to deploy SS-20s in Eastern Europe. That could have blown every single NATO capital to pieces. I knew that Brezhnev was betting that we Western leaders would not respond. I was determined to wreck his gamble. I offered Berkshire as a station for US cruise missiles and persuaded Western Germany to follow suit. That was what forced Kremlin to sign the INF Treaty in 1987, which eliminated a whole class of nuclear weapons and was so significant in ending the arms race of the Cold War. But, of course, it was your foreign policy that I found most synergy in. While you took the pivotal decisions, I offered firm support to back you up. Remember every time at summits, I would declare, Ron and I both think. When the Soviet Army first called me Iron Lady, it was meant to be a derogatory term. Yet I love this nickname and the world celebrates it to show my firmness in accelerating the end of the Cold War.
Wait. Can you guys just hold on a second? It's not fair to just claim that the military and diplomatic policies of the two of you ended the Cold War. If it weren't the internal problems we were already facing, the Soviet could still accompany you in the race for arms buildup, Reagan and Thatcher. If you two were the ones who ended the Cold War, why is that our defense expenditure was still so high after 1980? It's like we were preparing for another war. The idea here is that I did put in place the new thinking in foreign policies that would diffuse the tension between the Soviet Union and the US. Let's not overemphasize the significance of your policy first, Mr. Reagan. The military expenditure of Soviet Union actually increased from 1980 to 85, and it seems that we were a lot more hostile to the Americans. And there was actually very little proof that this Cold War ended. So I should be given more credit for ending the Cold War.
Your new thinking was a result of my brilliant foreign policy. It was because of your internal problems of an economy crippled by my get tough policy that you have to divert attention from foreign involvement to internal reforms.
Well, not entirely. My new thinking in foreign policies also stemmed from my own initiative. I recognized the value of peace and human rights, and was determined to depart from the hostility that permeated through the Cold War. Just look at the nature of my foreign policy from 85 to 89. The Soviet Union withdrew from the Third World nations, and in 87, I publicly stated that the Soviet Union would not continue with the Brezhnev doctrine of the 60s and 70s, where we would support and maintain you if you were communist. In 1988, we had shown how thoroughly we were breaking away from the past by announcing that all Soviet troops would be withdrawn from Afghanistan. Even before that, the sheer openness of my leadership was already winning support from your Americans. From this you can see, I was simply not interested in competition and amity, and my disinterest in competition was what truly brought the Cold War to an end.
Speaking of our improved relationships, I was the first to identify you as a potential friend. Mikhail, your new thinking would not have been so well received by the West without my effort in bridging you and Ronald. Remember your London visit in 1984? Instinctively, I knew that you were aware of the harsh reality faced by the Soviet Union and you were willing to establish good relationship with the West. Thus I declared, I like Mr. Gorbachev. We can do business together. It was only with this endorsement with me that you were able to convince Ronald of your seriousness in ending the Cold War and thawing your relationship.
Wait, people, you shall never forget me, the man atop the tent. During the August coup by conservative communists, I led atop a attempt to rally the people. That essentially won me support in the faith of the people, and they no longer trusted Gorbachev, who still attempted to retain communism. Taking over the leadership of the Russian Federation, I declared communism illegal and pushed through the independence of Russia. Republics followed suit in the wave of independence and democratization. The system was no longer existent. Yes, my dear fellow Mr. Gorbachev did end the enmity with US and gave up competing for sphere of influence. Yet I was the one who brought down the communist system and marked the end of the Cold War.
Alright. I think that's enough for today. So, as you can see, there isn't exactly anyone who can claim to be the biggest contributor to the end of the Cold War. Reagan, you were definitely instrumental in your aggressive policies which gave the US a strategic economic advantage in forcing the USSR to relinquish its influence and give up the Cold War competition, along with firm support from our Iron Lady Thatcher. Yet, this would not have been possible without the long-term legacy of Brezhnev. Credit also goes to Gorbachev for initiating a peaceful foreign policy to end the competition and enmity during the Cold War, which was nicely received by Thatcher and Reagan. As for our dear Yeltsin, we consider the Cold War to have ended before the collapse of the communist system due to diminishing hostility and competition. Thus, you may not be an important contributor. Alright, that's all for today. Thank you for tuning in.